main man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. We are still at least 1 week away from the new intro. I promise you it's going to be fire. But until that comes, let me just start by saying I thank each and every one of you for being here. We are going to have a different format for the month of February because it's Black History Month and it's also the month of love. So we talked about doing the go or no go segment to open every show. For this month only, we are going to not do the go or no go segment, and we're going to give you a little education on a special member from Black History and Business. And today we're going to start by talking about Sarah Rector. I learned about Sarah Rector actually on a TikTok. I was blown away to find out that Sarah Rector was the thing that stood out the most to me. And I'm going to bury the lead and then go back and talk about the gifted and wonderful Miss Rector, was that the people of her time who were in power felt as though it was so unacceptable to have a woman of color to have as much wealth as Miss Rector had, that they legally made an effort to have her deemed to not be of color. They legally had an effort to have her deemed to be white. The origins of that story. So Sarah Rector was the grandchild, because she passed away in 1967. She was the granddaughter of Creek Indians and African Americans. And there was a land allotment in Oklahoma that gave land to the descendants of Creek Indians. The odd thing is, and this is what happens when you try to do harm and dirt to people sometimes, they gave the people of color the worst land, the land of least value that they could give. They also didn't make any way for these people who got the land grants to pay their taxes. And Sarah's grandfather, in an effort to make sure that he could pay the taxes on the land, leased the land to an oil company. The oil company started drilling. They struck a gusher of oil. And Sarah, as the descendant of the land, ended up becoming an instant millionaire. She was getting $300 a day, which in that time was equating to a lot of money. There were laws on the books in Oklahoma that said if you were a full-blooded Indian, and Indian is the improper word, a full-blooded indigenous person of the region, if you were Black, person of color, and you came into wealth, you were instantly petitioned to have yourself removed from your legal guardians, your parents, and be assigned a white guardian. This was the law. And then the Oklahoma legislature, I always pronounce that word wrong, I'm a math guy, they then went to vote full-bloodedly to have her declared a white person. Now, at first, it was deemed to be done for her benefit because Blacks had so limited rights. She wasn't allowed to go into hotels. She wasn't allowed in the first-class car of a train, yet she was a multi-millionaire. So they figured if they had her deemed white, she would get these privileges. But at the end of the day, it was more about stripping her and her future descendants of their inherited wealth. Fortunately, W.E.B. Du Bois got word of this story, and he actually started a division, a children's division of the NAACP, to make sure that these types of corruptive matters didn't happen in the future. And she ended up being able to get educated, going to a school for children that was associated with what we now know as Tuskegee Institute. And as I said, she passed away 3 years before I was born. So when we talk about Black history in America, we have to realize these aren't ancient stories. Sarah Rector was born in 1902 and died in 1967. My great-grandmother helped raise me, and my great-grandmother was born, I want to say in 1908. So they ran similar in age, and it's just one of those situations where if we don't unearth these facts and share them amongst ourselves, we may never know these stories. The reality for me in this month of bringing stories like this to light is to enhance the pride that people of color have about their origins. there's so much. I was talking to the producers before the show. There's a term, whitewashing American history. And the reality is that when you think about what's going on even today, when you think of Africa and Northern Africa, Egypt is often referred to as not being part of Africa. They start talking about the Middle East and Northern Africa instead of just understanding that Egypt is Africa. These areas are part of the continent of color. And when you get that programming over and over again, it's very easy to start to feel inferior. So this month on our programming throughout every 15 minutes of finance and through the Financial Power Hour, we're going to highlight successful Black businesses, successful Black entrepreneurs, the history of culture and success post Jim Crow, during Jim Crow. We're going to highlight the author Lawrence Otis Graham, who wrote a book called Our Kind of People that looked into the Black elite. I'm going to talk about the original Black elite. There's another book that I've read, and just really instill the sense of pride that I want everyone to know, Black or white. Once again, we're in a time of inclusion. We're touting that now we're breaking color barriers, we're breaking gender barriers, we're breaking religious and political and race and sexual orientation barriers to all become one people. We need to have a strong appreciation for all of our histories. And I think that for African Americans, our history has been fed to us in a way that makes us feel inferior. And I want to do my part here on 15 Minutes of Finance, the Financial Power Hour, and the Wealth Our Way Network as a whole to dismiss those feelings of inferiority. So Sarah Rector, can we put the graphic back up for Sarah one more time, just to show who she was, a descendant of Creek Indians. She was given the worst land possible, ended up getting all of the oil that could be made in that area. And then she was named one of the first, not even female, just one of the first Black millionaires of her time. So Sarah Rector is today's Black history topic. Now we're going to move into the subject of love. And in love, I was just telling the producers before the show started, I don't think I have a higher level of love. I know you're not supposed to differentiate between classes of love, but there was something about the very first time I met my daughter, Bria. When my eyes met her eyes, I knew love for the first time. So I want to talk about our children. This month, we're going to focus on money and children. I got a very interesting article sent to me yesterday by my boy, Brew. Shout out to Brew. You guys know him, and he's always in the group. And Brew sent me an article on some changes that have been made to 529 plans to allow them to convert to Roth IRAs, to be able to basically create a class of millionaires amongst our children. Now, most of us who come to the Financial Power Hour and to 15 Minutes of Finance, we're in our 40s to 50s, maybe even 60s, and our kids are grown now. So maybe this won't help our children, but we can spread this information to our children so that when they start having children, our grandchildren can benefit. We can also help fund these types of accounts for our grandchildren. I'm going to talk about that on a later show. Today, I'm going to talk about raising financially conscious children. And my man Arion always tells me that one of his favorite parts of the show is when I share my personal anecdotal stories, things that have happened to me. And this is one that I have a very recent personal story. My son, I split time with his mother. I have my son 2 weeks a month. He stays with his mother 2 weeks a month. And this is really, of all of my children, he's the sixth of all my children. He's the first one that I've had to raise hands-on by myself. His mother and I raised his older siblings together until we got divorced. And now I have him alone, my complete influence, and dealing with every issue he brings up. And it is very eye-opening and a learning experience for me. One of the things that we're getting into with him is money. I'll give you an example. It's a real life example. I paid my baby girl Sydney's tuition, and there was a refund on the tuition of $200 and some. So she called me. She's like, "Dad, got a refund. I'm not going to steal your money. I want to give it to you." So she brought the refund check to me, but the check was in her name. We don't have a joint account, so I didn't think I could deposit a check in her name. So she decided that she would deposit the check and send me the money electronically. Now I use Cash App and Venmo. That's what I know. She sent me the money via Apple Pay. I don't know how to use Apple Pay. I always tell you guys technology is not something I'm up on. So what I decided to do, because I'm constantly giving her younger brother money, and he does have Apple Pay, it's attached to one of my credit cards, I sent him the money in Apple Pay the minute she gave it to me. It was $212, I want to say. He freaked out. He sent me a text, because this was during the time he was with his mom. He said, wow, what's this for? I said, this is so you can stop hitting my credit card for $4 a day for Powerade or lunches. Spend your own money. We'll talk about how you should spend it. This happened the first week of January. It's just the first day of February today. So within 1 month, this boy calls me back and tells me he's out of money. And I realized, man, Mr. Financial Advisor, you did a horrible job. You did not get in front of this. You gave somebody who was used to spending maybe $10, $15 a week when he had to ask you every time he swiped a card, you gave him unfettered access to money. And the very first time he had an opportunity, he ran through $212 in 3 weeks. So I told him, I've been on the road. I told him when I get back and he has his time with me starting on Sunday, we're going to sit down and make him a budget. Yes, he's getting a budget. Like you guys know, I love budgets. And we're going to talk about fiscal responsibility, because if you want someone to do the right thing, you have to give them a roadmap on how they can succeed. But you also have to get an understanding. We talked about this with relationships last time. You have to get an understanding of how they see money. And it's no more difficult an endeavor than to show someone who doesn't have to earn their own money why it's prudent to be responsible with money. Because there's a disconnect between the cost of getting it and the cost of using it. So raising fiscally responsible kids is a huge issue, especially when you start making means yourself and you get caught up in that trap of you want your children to do better than you did, and you start giving them levels of privilege that they didn't earn necessarily. So I'll give you 3 tips that I'm going to use with the young prince to get him to understand money. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to sit down and discuss where money comes from. I want to give, he sees me go to work. He sees me in the corner of the apartment on my Zooms and my meetings, but he doesn't understand how hard it is to derive a dollar. So the first thing we're going to do is give him a sense of value of what it takes to bring money in. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk me to him and get an understanding of what he values, what he wants to spend money on, and why. So I think that when you're dictating to someone and constantly telling them how to do something, those plans don't always get implemented because there's not a level of buy-in. So after we talk about the value of the dollar, we're going to talk about what he sees dollars to be used for. And then the third point that I would stress that all of us should really sit down and talk with our children about is a long-range plan to replenish money. How do you get money? What is your economy? For my son, his economy is me. But my son asks me every day, can he get a job? So he wants to work. I don't have enough time today to go into this, but I'm anti-job. I'm an entrepreneur. So I don't want him thinking I got to get a job. I want him thinking I got to build a business. So that's one of the things that he and I will sit down, his long-range plans on how to replenish money, whether it's getting allowances from me or doing something to derive money. So those are the 3 tips. And thank you, Tashawana, for putting it into the chat. Discuss where money comes from. What do you value about money? And your long-range plan to keep your economy going, to replenish your money. Those are 3 helpful tips to start making and raising financially conscious children. Thank you all for being here. Next Wednesday, we will continue with part 2 of raising financially conscious children. Until then, remember, wealth is not only for the wealthy. You guys take care.